Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Michael Harrington. I'm co-chair of Network 49, and on behalf of myself and my other co-chair, Katie Hogan, we want to thank you for coming out tonight and joining us for this forum. Network 49 is a community-based, membership-led membership organization focused on progressive issues and policies in the 49th Ward Rogers Park community. You're welcome to talk to any of our leadership here tonight, as well as the other organizations that are co-sponsors, which I want to point out who also helped make this happen. And I'm going to move in the front. Well, I can do it right now. Network 49. I want to thank the Democratic Party of the 49th Ward. We want to thank the Senior Caucus, Jane Addams Senior Caucus. We want to thank the League of Women Voters of Chicago. We want to thank Protect RP. We want to thank Rise 49. These 6 organizations came together, have been working for nearly 2 months in preparing for tonight's event. Each of our organizations have volunteers here today helping take information, hand out, and help people find seats, helping make this happen. And certainly want to thank, well, we'll hear more about thanking Sullivan High School, which are a tremendous host. Their staff and their students especially deserve tremendous, tremendous applause for what they've done tonight. I want to bring up Graciela for a quick announcement. Graciela.
Thank you so much. This will be a really brief announcement in Spanish. Buenas noches.
Buenas noches.
Perfecto. Ok, para personas hispanoparlantes que gustarían traducción en tiempo real, tenemos equipaje atrás. Y si Gabe me podría hacer un sacudido de la mano, perfecto. Si gustarían equipaje, pueden ir a verme atrás. Si algún punto del evento les falta batería, no me pueden oír, simplemente pasen atrás y les ayudamos. Gracias.
Some of the housekeeping stuff we want to point out includes the fact that the washrooms are in the lobby if you need to go. This is going to be an hour-and-a-half long event. Childcare is in room 106 on the main floor here. We have registered, approved, CPS approved childcare providers available. If you need that, room 106 right on the outside. And what else have I forgot? That's it. That's it. Now, Katie Hogan.
Hi. Wow. I would like to just say, welcome neighborhood. Look at yourselves. How much do we love this neighborhood? Thank you all for being here. And again, we're going to bring Chad Adams up in a minute, but Chad Adams, in case you don't know, has been a life spring to the community via his job here as principal of Sullivan High School. He's been doing a great job. Let's hear it for him. And all these beautiful young people around who are going to be passing cards to you, index cards for your questions, with pencils, which you can pass back because we've already run out of things. So all those young people who are passing out the program, the cards, the pencils, are students from Sullivan High School, so let's give them a hand. All right. We're basically going to turn this over to the professionals. We also want to thank very much the presence and incredible partnership of the League of Women Voters throughout this whole process, who made it possible. For those of you who are Network 49 members, there is going to be an endorsement. It's going to come, the vote is coming to you in the mail, and we'll talk to you more about that later. But when this is over, it's going to be whistled over at 8:30, and the candidates and you all can mingle as much as the candidates let you in that time until they kick us out at 9. Okay? Rogers Park, I love it. I love that you're here. Let's make this a beautiful night. Okay, yeah. Sorry. I was supposed to say, and now, Chad Adams.
As you can tell, I'm not afraid to jump on the stage. Welcome to Sullivan High School. Our core values here are family, integrity, service, and tenacity. You know, and we shouted out our teachers, but you know, I'm a principal, but before I was a principal, I was a teacher, and I will always be a teacher, an English teacher in that. And so I also have to shout out my teachers, Miss Lawrence, Mr. Matthew, Miss Evans is in there somewhere too. The teachers are what make a school great. If you love your teachers, they'll love the kids, and that's what's important, right? So I just want to, you know, you give 2 minutes in front of 600 people, you need to sell your brand, you need to sell your school, and our school has come so far in such a short amount of time. This is my 6th year at a school. In 2000, from 2000 to 2013 was the lowest performing high school on the north side of Chicago. In 2012, a school of 700 suspensions in one school year. Could you imagine? A school that had only about 80% students coming to school every day. A school with only about a 40% graduation rate, and they count that graduation rate from every kid that enters this building from their freshman year, no matter if they leave the next day or not. We get counted towards their graduation. I'm happy to say that this school now has nearly a 75% graduation rate. %90 of average daily attendance. And unfortunately today I had to suspend a kid, so that was the 3rd suspension of the year. So from 700 to 3, that's pretty dang good, right? And so it takes the teachers, it takes the kids, and Rogers Park and Sullivan really is a microcosm of the world that we live in. And if it can work with diversity in Rogers Park and in Sullivan, it can work in the United States. It can work in anywhere. We have over 40 languages spoken in this school. Diversity brings us together. And being a neighborhood high school, we need you. We need the community. I'm lucky enough to have a group of people, my Friends of Sullivan. Mike Glasser, can you raise your hand, Mike? That's my president of Friends of Sullivan. And I know there's some other Friends of Sullivan here. These people came to me and said they want to help and they want to do more, and they're raising money for the school and doing more for this school. Briefly, just to tell you a little bit more about Sullivan, and I'm going to get off the stage and let these two people do their thing. This school is back on the map. You know, we went from one of the lowest performing schools, from like a level 3 to a level 2+, on the verge of level 1. We have the same rating as Lakeview High School. We have the same data as Lakeview High School. So it can be done, and we're doing it here. We've started down a road that not many high schools have started down. A lot of elementaries have started down this road. Over 200 elementary schools are doing what's called personalized learning. I was a special education student growing up, and when you're a special education student, you get what's called an individual education plan, right? The teachers set aside time to figure out what you're good at, what you need to work on, what you need to concentrate on, what your goals need to be, what your reading levels are, right? And because I failed a grade and became a special education child, I got the individual education plan. And I was able to succeed because of that hyper-focus of that individual education plan. What personalized learning is, and what we're trying to do at Sullivan, is we're trying to find out what every child's passion is, what every child's reading score is, what every child needs in life, so we can help them be better after they leave here and be better for this country and better for this city. And with this personalized learning plan, the kids are learning more than they've ever learned, and they're more passionate about their learning, and they come to school more because they know that we care. So I just implore you to spread the good word about Sullivan. You know, being a failing school for so long, we have a bad reputation, and we have a different reputation between these walls, and we need you to celebrate that with us and in the community for us. I'm going to turn it over to Miss Kathy Tate Bradish at this point from the League of Women Voters of Evanston. Sorry, I'm getting excited talking about the school. You know, I get a little fired up. Even I've been here since 5 a.m., but I'm still fired up. So I'm going to turn it over to them, and students, I really want you to see the power of democracy, right? See the power of democracy. Because we take it for granted. We take it for granted that we can do what we're doing tonight. Have a great night. Enjoy yourself.
I'm fired up too. Go Tigers. So I am going to start us out with the rules. I used to be a German teacher, actually. That's going to show through the course of the next hour and a half, I think. And let me say, I have moderated U.S. representative races, and I've never had this big of a crowd. So kudos to all of you. So the League of Women Voters promotes an engaged and informed electorate, and there is no better example of that than when we do a candidate forum, and we're working very closely with Sullivan High School. This is sort of, you know, raw, pure civics happening in here today. When a league runs a forum, we have timekeepers, and we have what are called card sorters, which you'll hear about in a second, and we have what are called card runners, which you've probably seen, the kids with the cards, and those are always filled by League of Women Voters members of the local league. And this time, none of those are filled by the League of Women Voters. They've all been filled by Sullivan High School students, and and we have nearly 30 students here tonight. So those of you who have high school students or ever were a high school student, you know that's a pretty big commitment, and I've just been so pleased. It's been such a pleasure to work with them. So the rules. Your candidates, whichever is your favorite, or maybe you're making up your mind tonight, have agreed to the rules that I'm going to be talking about, and they also want you to follow those rules. So number one is nothing that makes any noise. I used to say no pagers back when I was first moderating, but you could take a second right now and silence your phone. You probably think it's silenced, and somebody who's going to be really embarrassed in like 17 minutes from now, your phone isn't silenced, so you could do it right now. Katie Hogan already has announced a couple of times, but I'm wearing a button because it says League of Women Voters, but nothing that has anything to do with any campaign or any candidate in here. We really do try to make this more like government and less like politics, I guess I could say. So, and I think everybody has followed those rules. I appreciate it. So your candidates are going to have 2 minutes of an introduction. Then they're going to answer questions. They flipped for order. It is Ms. Haddon first and Mr. Moore second, and they're going to flip-flop on the order in which they answer the questions, so they each get first bite at the apple every other question. We've got very nice timekeepers. They're down in front. Timekeepers, wave your hands. And now wave the stop sign up. So on stop, they'll be a little bit more sneaky and sly about the 60 seconds and 30 seconds, and they'll catch the candidate's eyes. But the kids know that the adults are in charge of making sure that they've seen 30 seconds and wrap it up at the stop. And the candidates and I have discussed this. There will be no deep breath in order to finish the sentence that they're on. They'll just finish it. They can take a couple notes and they can give it to us in their summary at the end. I really, really, really would like you to save your applause to the end. The reason is the way league forums are set up, you don't get to walk up to a mic, you write the questions down. It's to get through as many questions as possible. So please don't applaud. And I know this seems kind of funny. Don't even applaud the opening statements. It's not like a competition of whose applause is higher. There isn't going to be any applause. And needless to say, no booing or calling out from the audience, and everybody here is really smart, and the high school students are really, really smart. I know because I've worked with them for a couple of days. So if you do that, everybody knows which candidate you do support, and you make yourself look bad, you make the candidates look bad. So this is a nice evening of civics that we're going to have. We're going to get to as many questions as possible. I almost never get to all of them, and I can promise you I won't tonight, but the candidates can stay after, as Katie Hogan told you, until 9 o'clock, so that's going to be mingling time. Some of you may not have gotten a card, or if you've come in a little bit late. Oh, by the way, come on down, you people. Everybody who's got a seat next to them, would you put your hand up, please? We really would like you to be sitting down here. Get comfortable. The students are going to be able to find you a little bit more easily. You're going to enjoy it more. You're going to be so tired of standing. That's great. Thanks a lot. If you at some time during the debate realize that you would like to ask a question and you don't have a card, raise your hand and one of the high school students will bring you a card. We still do have cards left, right? Okay. Borrow a pencil from somebody near you. I think we've run out of pencils. If you have written a card, if you've written a question, oh, there we've got a volunteer with a pencil right down there. Borrow from him. If you've written your question, raise the card, they'll come and get the question from you. The questions all go down to our high school students sitting down here at what we call the card sorter table. They're being assisted by a member of the League of Women Voters of Chicago, but they are the ones making all of the decisions on the questions. So the rules are, it has to be appropriate to the level of government. So you might be very interested in what the candidates feel about the pullout of troops from Syria, but they're not going to be able to vote for that as a city council person. So it's got to be the level of office. I have to be able to read it. They're sometimes rewriting cards that they suspect I can't read on the fly, but they can kind of figure it out. But better just use your best printing, not handwriting, if you can. We sort for duplication, so if there are a couple of similar questions, you might hear one similar to yours but not exactly yours. That's probably the reason why. No personal attacks, that goes without saying, and it needs to be capable of being answered by both candidates. That's a League of Women Voters rule. They are sorted and brought to me. I might shift around and put things in different order depending on what makes sense. And please give the pencils back at the end of the day. One of our organizers bought them. Candidates can stay till 8:30, and I think that we are ready to go. So timekeepers, 2 minutes, and Ms. Haddon goes first.
Good evening. Thank you very much, Kathy. Thank you, Chad. Thank you to all the students and the staff at Sullivan for hosting us, and thank you all for being here. So my name is Maria Haddon. I'm running for alderman here in the 49th Ward because I want to bring an independent, progressive voice to City Council on our behalf. I've lived in the 49th Ward for 11 years, and over the last decade, I've worked in the nonprofit world with community organizations and local governments in Chicago and around the country to make sure that we can bring communities and electeds together so that we can have more inclusive and accountable government, the government that we deserve. One of the reasons that I choose to call the 49th Ward home is because here we value community voice, we value diversity, inclusion, over almost everything else. And I'm proud to be a part of what I see as an independent, progressive tradition of strong leadership and community. There are some issues where my opponent and I, agree, and some issues where I feel like he's lived up to that legacy. He's brought participatory budgeting to the 49th Ward, and he also fought for a living wage. But in recent years, I think he's fallen short of being the independent progressive leader that we deserve. I'm going to be a champion for our neighborhood public schools. I'm going to stand by and abide by the referendum asking for a freeze to charter expansions or new charters. And I'm also going to work for development without displacement in our community so that the people who live here can stay here. I believe in centering community voice, and I want to bring that independent, progressive voice back to the 49th Ward and back to Chicago City Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Moore.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the sponsoring organizations for hosting tonight's forum, the League of Women Voters for agreeing to moderate, and Sullivan and their students for hosting. I'm here tonight to ask you for another 4 years as your alderman so that I can continue my fight for progressive change at City Hall and Rogers Park. Lots of candidates these days call themselves progressive, but words mean nothing if they're not accompanied by results that actually benefit real people. Working in partnership with labor and community activists, I was one of the leaders in the battle for Chicago's first minimum wage. I worked with affordable housing advocates to require developers to provide more affordable housing. I joined forces with environmental groups to close 2 dirty power plants that harmed our environment and our health. I was a pioneer for community policing, fought to release the names of police officers accused of violence, and helped to secure reparations for the victims of police torture. Here in the 49th Ward, I was the first elected official to adopt participatory budgeting to give you, the taxpayer, not the politicians, the power to decide how to spend your tax dollars. I've worked hard to preserve our neighborhood's diversity by creating and preserving over 1,000 units of affordable housing and secured over $80 million to improve our local schools. In short, I've been an agent for progressive change. Working with you and our neighbors, we've made Rogers Park a far better place than when I first took office. Our streets are safer, our schools are better, and our business climate has improved. All the while, we've kept our economic, cultural, and racial diversity that make our neighborhood the crown jewel of Chicago. You see, platitudes and empty promises don't get things done. Hard work, collaboration, and yes, experience is the recipe for a progressive city and a successful and vibrant community. If you honor me with another 4 years, I promise I will continue to be an agent for change.
Thank you. Someone insisted that I have a stool. It's kind of nice being tall. I hope you can see me better and also still hear me. So Ms. Haddon takes the first question first. And I didn't say this earlier. Anytime you'd like me to repeat a question, be sure that you just ask, okay? Would you support an ordinance that prevents ICE from entering buildings without the explicit permission of the owner? Explain.
Yes. I think that especially in the 49th Ward, but all over Chicago, that it's the obligation and duty for elected representatives to protect and support all of our community and all of our residents. Under the current administration, we have members of our community that are more vulnerable than ever, and if you elect me, I will work in City Council to advance further protections for undocumented folks and other people that are vulnerable under this current administration.
Thank you. Mr. Moore.
I appreciate you starting out with a softball question. Yes, of course I would support such an ordinance. I remember being in this very hall in the dark days following Trump's inauguration when he launched a series of unconstitutional bans on Muslims coming into this country. And we had a forum here that was filled the room like it is tonight, telling people what their rights are, advising them, and providing them assistance. I have been in the forefront of doing whatever we can to protect our immigrants and holding not only forums that evening or that afternoon in Sullivan High School, but in locations throughout the ward, advising people of their rights, making sure they knew what to do if ICE agents approach them, and doing everything we can to advocate for all the people in our community, especially those who are the most vulnerable.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Moore is going to take this next question first. So it's going to look to you like everybody's answering 2 questions in a row, 2 questions in a row, but it's just to ensure that everyone gets equal number of chances to be the first one to answer and the second one to answer. So this is for Mr. Moore. Will you respect the outcome of the 2016 charter freeze referendum for a moratorium and commit to no new charters and no expansion of existing charters in the 49th Ward? Please explain why or why not.
As alderman of the 49th Ward, I'm elected to represent all the people. The advisory referendum had 62% voting for a freeze on charters and 38% voting against it. And it was an advisory referendum, and ultimately I'm elected to be a leader. And yes, listen to the advice of people, but also do what I believe is right. I believe that every family is entitled to send their children to a school of their choice. I am not pro-charter, I am pro-good school. And any school that wishes to provide children and their families with a quality education, I will support. I don't believe a community can have too many good schools. We want to keep families in Rogers Park, and we want to attract more families to Rogers Park. And the goal to do that is to have quality schools. Sullivan High School has done a great job.
Thank you, Mr. Moore.
I got that in.
Ms. Haddon.
Yes, I would support that advisory referendum. And it's not only because 62% of voters and a host of community organizations organized to make that so, but also because our schools are struggling with an inequitable funding formula. We can have too many good schools because right now we have a per pupil funding model that makes it difficult for every school to get the amount of funding they need to keep the heat on, the lights on, their roofs fixed, enough staff, and to get the resources for increased programming that they need that we've seen Sullivan High School benefit from. And so until we get an equitable funding formula, I would support the freeze on any charter expansion or new charters.
Thank you. So Ms. Haddon takes this next question first. And I see some cards are being, oh, there we go. Thanks a lot, you guys. So this is a little bit related, so I'll give you this question right now. In spite of recent academic improvement, our elementary feeder schools to Sullivan are enrolled at only 60% of capacity. In boundary attendance, that is, the percentage of children residing who choose their neighborhood school, is even lower. However, nearby schools in the 48th and 50th wards have enrollment at over capacity. What will you do, or what have you been doing, to boost enrollment in our neighborhood CPS schools and encourage 49th ward families to send their kids to neighborhood schools?
I've long been an advocate and a volunteer and champion for our neighborhood public schools. Most recently, working with LSC members and community organizations to raise funds to bring a new smart health clinic to Gale Elementary School. I want to bring more community like this into our schools. We need to change the perception and the reputation of our neighborhood schools. We have fantastic principals, staff, teachers, and students, and I commit to making sure we've got a complete K through 12 solution so that Rogers Park and 49th Ward families see our neighborhood schools as a first choice, as they should be.
Thank you. Mr. Moore.
I too have been a champion for our neighborhood schools. On my tenure as alderman, I've overseen $80 million worth of capital improvements to our school, bringing 2 new schools and 2 new school additions to Rogers Park. I too was very supportive of the Gale Health Clinic and secured a commitment from Loyola University to donate $25,000, a one-time gift that Loyola had not heretofore had not given to any cause or organization, and I was happy to facilitate that. The key to our schools is not only community support, but also strong principals. This school, in fact, just about every school in this community is blessed with a very strong principal. Just a few years ago, our schools were at levels 2s and 3s, with one exception. There was one level 1. Now they're level 2s and 1s. That is a testament to our principals, our teachers, our LSC members, and yes, the alderman.
Thank you. Mr. Moore. Do you support reallocating police service from low crime to high crime neighborhoods? Explain.
I do not, and this is one area where I differ with my opponent. The fact is that this ward deserves an advocate. And yes, there are other parts of the city that may need more police protection, but I do not want to lose police to other communities. We need as much police protection as reasonably possible, and I will strongly advocate for that. Maria, in her questionnaire her response to an IVI IPO questionnaire, said she would advocate moving police officers from low crime areas to higher crime areas. Well, the 24th district, we have our crime issues, but we are one of the lowest crime rate districts in the city. We're usually ranked number 2 or 3 safest. So that would mean losing police officers. As the terrible incidents of this past fall demonstrate, we need to have police.
Thank you. Ms. Haddon?
The 49th ward is one of 49 wards in a large city. The issues that we face with gun violence and safety and crime issues, we are, as Joe said, one of the neighborhoods with the lowest crime and violent crime rates. We have finite resources, and we have a lot of infrastructure, schools, and other funding to support. I do support allocating police resources in a more equitable way, just as I support allocating funds for our public schools in a more equitable way. We need to make sure that all of Chicago is taken care of, because issues of gun violence especially and other parts of the city impact us too. and they don't stay in one area. So while we have finite resources, I do approve of reallocating resources to where they are most needed, and believe that a lot of the community work that we're doing, investing in our local organizations and block clubs, is how we really create safety in the 49th Ward.
Thank you. Ms. Haddon, what questions do you ask yourself when accepting campaign donations? How do you determine whose money to take and whose to turn down? Will you pledge not to take money from developers in your campaign?
The questions that I ask are, is this money coming from an organization or individual that shares my values, or that could be perceived as causing a conflict of interest in any current or future decisions? So it is why I have pledged to not take campaign contributions during the campaign or while in office from developers and large corporate interests that are doing business with the city or in the ward. And I'm proud to say that 62% of my donations actually come from you all. Here in the 49th Ward, because we've built a strong grassroots campaign. It's also why I support fair elections reform and public campaign financing, so that we can level the playing field and make sure that we can restore faith and trust in government. I want you to know that when I'm making decisions about developments, that they're based on what's best for you and not what's best on who's contributing to my campaign and supporting my political needs.
Thank you. Mr. Moore.
I would love to have to not answer this question, which is why I'm a sponsor of the Fair Election Ordinance, which calls for public financing of campaigns and limits on campaign contributions if one participates in that. I've just talked about it just the other day. But the reality is it's not the law now, and all of us running for office have to raise money to get our message out to the voters. I have turned back a number of contributions over the years because I felt that they were offered on a quid pro quo basis. I have always made my decisions based on what I believe was best for my community and according to my values. And I will continue to do that. Every campaign contribution I make, over $150, I disclose as required by law. And in terms of my decisions regarding zoning matters in the community, I have a very open and transparent process. I have an advisory committee of neighborhood residents and representatives of the community organizations that advise me on all zoning land use issues that I follow.
Thank you.
Almost all the time.
Mr. Moore, there are 3 school board models: the current model, appointed, a fully elected model, and a hybrid of elected and appointed members. Which do you support and why? And if you want to change the current model, what will you do as alderman to bring that about as quickly as possible?
The question is directed to me.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Mr.
Moore. I believe in accountability. I believe that the current system of mayors choosing Board of Education members provides that accountability. It's probably one reason why Rahm Emanuel's not running for re-election. So there was more than a degree of accountability in the decisions that he made. Large school systems are different than suburban communities. Large urban school systems require a public education system where you take away a little bit of the politics. All you have to do is look at the experience of Los Angeles. They have an elected school board. They're now having a teacher strike. Their test scores, their struggles are no different than Chicago's. To me, the key is what is the best way to improve the education of our children. And it's been no study that has ever shown a correlation between how we choose a school board and the quality of education that our children receive.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Thank you. Ms. Haddon.
I support both an elected school board and would be open to a hybrid elected appointed school board. It's not a matter of whether elected school boards work or appointed school boards work. It's the pure fact that our mayoral appointed school board system here has failed us. It has failed the children in our city. It's failed our families. You can't say that these things are working for us and that are providing us with adequate accountability when we have schools chiefs being indicted and adding to our problems of corruption. We need change. We need it now. And so that's why I support an elected school board and would be open to a hybrid elected appointed school board as well. And I'll work with the Progressive Reform Caucus and others to move this legislation forward as we need, and to pressure at the state level to make sure that Chicago families and students have the same right and access as other students and school districts in the rest of the state.
Thank you. Ms. Haddon, what are the key values and principles that are important to you in being alderman of the 49th Ward?
Well, that's my favorite question so far. So independent progressive values is something that I talk a lot about, and it's what I've learned and why I chose to call this community home. Other principles that I hold are really public service. We need to center community members in our decision making. We need an approach to leadership that is collaborative. We need to change the culture of how city government has been run in Chicago that seems more focused on the interests of big money, corporations, and folks with lots of power. But this is a city of the people. Nothing demonstrates that more than who's in this room today. So independent, progressive voice, values, and we need to raise the bar on ethics as well.
Thank you. Mr. Moore.
Values of collaboration, of hard work, of service. I'm asking you for another 4 years because I love this job. I love serving people. I am eligible to collect a pension. I could have retired and made a lot of money, but I'm not motivated by money. I'm motivated by service. I love this community. I love the fact that we are really showing that a successful, diverse community can not only survive, but can grow and thrive and be an attractive place to raise a family and to live. And I want to continue to live those values and to promote those values in this community and in the City Council across the city of Chicago.
Thank you. Mr. Moore, and timekeepers, we're going to give 90 seconds on this one.
Uh-oh.
Because this can be totally answered in 90 seconds. You guys, tell me when you're ready.
Hit me.
Actually, I can read the question and then tell me when you're ready. Are you ready? Okay. How would you address the root causes of poverty in the 49th Ward and Chicago? 90 seconds. Go.
90 seconds. Well, we've been talking a lot about it so far, and that's education. Clearly, it is important that our children have the best access to quality education as possible. And that's why I firmly believe that every parent, regardless of their economic circumstances, should have a right to choose a school that they believe best fits their children's needs. I was very fortunate growing up. I attended Evanston Public Schools. They were very, very good. As when I had my children, my kid's mother and I, we exercised our ability, and our privilege to send our children to the school that we thought was best for them. I want parents who are immigrant parents who are working 2 jobs, parents who are barely struggling to make ends meet, parents who don't have the privileges that I enjoy. They have the same kind of choice to send their kids to a quality school, a school that has an excellent track record of putting kids into college, to give their kids the kind of opportunity that they want their children to have. When your child is first grade or second grade, you only have one shot at educating your child and making sure that they have a quality school. So that is the absolute key. Education is the key to ending poverty and providing for opportunity. And boy, I just was getting started.
Thank you. Ms. Haddon.
Thank you for the 90 seconds. Education and access to equitably funded quality education is absolutely one piece. And also, one of the reasons why I'm running is because I think in the city, we need to look at a holistic picture as well. We're obviously situated in a difficult economy with stagnant wages, not a lot of access for people to have good paying jobs. So supporting fair work week ordinances, advancing further on living wages is important as well. making sure that I work to support our neighborhood community social service agencies and nonprofits that work hard to provide enrichment programs and things outside of our public education system for our young people. But also, this isn't just about young people, right? We have a lot of working people who are poor. Poverty is a huge issue, and I think it's the responsibility of City Council to work to build an economic, housing, and education plan that's thinking 20 and 30 years in the future. I feel like we're in a lot of trouble because we have folks making short-sighted decisions, taking payoffs for today, that's costing our future generations. So the issue of poverty is not just solved by education, though that's a great place to start, but we need a city council that's tackling the larger issues of making sure that Chicago is a place where people want to stay and where we can all thrive.
Thank you. I think that was pretty good for 90 seconds, you guys. They've been thinking about these issues, right? So Ms. Haddon takes the next question first. I'm seeing so much focus from you on education. I also have to say this is the most questions I have ever received from a forum in my life, and so now I can promise you that we will not finish all of them. So, Ms. Haddon, as LSC, Local School Council members, we face cuts in our schools' budgets every year. The pool hasn't been fixed at Sullivan. The playground at Kilmer is badly in need of replacement. Many of our schools don't have a teacher for art or library. Additionally, unlike in Edgewater and West Ridge, none of our CPS neighborhood elementary schools have special academic programming such as International Baccalaureate, STEM, or Fine and Performing Arts, and haven't for more than 2 decades. How will you address these needs in our local schools? That was for Ms. Haddon.
I've listened and attended. I've listened to a lot of the local school council members and attended several meetings. And in my years here also with having involvement with our public schools, I know that what we are lacking now and what I hope to be is a champion advocating for you in CPS, in City Hall. It's about listening to these needs and then making sure that I'm showing up to those committee meetings, showing up to the Board of Education with you, and working at least as hard as the principals and the teachers and the staff do at this school to get creative, to bring in additional resources. I feel that we've had a lot of these infrastructure needs that I've heard about as a community member, and I haven't seen leadership coming out of our alderman's office to talk about these issues downtown or to advocate for them. So I know the budget's tough. And it's competitive, but I commit to being the champion that we need because that's what the role of alderman is supposed to be.
Thank you. Mr. Moore.
Well, obviously, I disagree with Maria's assessment. I have been an advocate and fighter for our schools since I was first elected alderman. I highlighted some of those just a little bit ago. Most recently, working together with the LSC and Kilmer's principal, we were able to secure a commitment for a long overdue new roof and a new facade improvements that'll be going underway. That'll cost about $5 to $10 million. That's not an insubstantial amount of money. Ultimately, though, the key is not fighting over the crumbs, but fighting down in Springfield to make sure that we get the kind of resources from the state that we need. Fortunately, we now have a governor who has campaigned and pledged to enact a graduated state income tax that will provide, I hope, to schools with more resources so that they can provide a quality education for their kids. But any school principal in this neighborhood will tell you that I've been a fighter on their behalf.
Thank you. Mr. Moore, there have been several independent or citizen review committees to look at police conduct. How would you make the Citizen Review Board for the police more effective?
Well, I have signed on to the GAPA ordinance, which I believe is probably the most well thought out and has the most public support. One of our major candidates for mayor, Tony Preckwinkle, just endorsed that proposal that would provide for an elected civilian oversight of the Chicago Police Department. The Obama Justice Department said there were two basic things that our police department needs. One was better training, and the other was oversight. And my hope is that GAPA will go a long way to ensuring that the police have the oversight that they need and that the citizens of this community need as well.
Thank you. Ms. Haddon.
I believe that we have a couple of possibilities when it comes to police accountability and civilian review. So in addition to GAPA, which is something I support, there's also CPAC, which is another measure that I think provides some real strong teeth to making sure that our police department gets to the place that we need it to be in order to serve us. I've been a member of Network 49, a local independent political organization, and we were a plaintiff in the Attorney General's consent decree. So there are some very strong reforms that I'm excited about championing and following up on in City Council as your alderman to make sure that we get the reforms and accountability. And at the local level, I'll continue working with groups like Network 49 and the Safe Communities Task Force to work to build that accountability here. To make sure that we're building relationships with our local police officers so that all of the residents of the 49th Ward feel safe, feel served, feel protected, and that we're getting the accountability we deserve.
Thank you. Ms. Haddon. Given that Rogers Park is surrounded on one side entirely by water, I'm not sure you can be surrounded on one side, but I like the question. I like the question. I'm reading it anyway. Given that Rogers Park is surrounded on one side entirely by water, I'd like to hear what the alderperson will do concerning water safety. It is of grave concern to me that a high school filled with minority and immigrant children who often have statistically fewer opportunities to learn to swim, do not have a working pool. Ms. Haddon.
This is of huge importance to me, and I'm proud to say that we, after this summer, several community members in our neighborhood and in the neighboring 50th Ward actually started a new organization for water safety. So the Chicago Alliance for Waterfront Safety was happy to support them in their efforts of getting more training and also in lobbying to get water safety equipment in all of the first responder vehicles. I commit to continuing that work in City Council to try to make sure that we've got budgets for that, and also to work to support our school. I think last time I checked, we need $1.2 million to fix the swimming pool here at Sullivan. This pool used to be a great resource for the students here, as well as during the summer for Park District programs. It's something that I've been working on, and I will continue to work on with the support of the residents in this neighborhood.
Thank you. Mr. Moore.
After last summer's horrible, tragic drowning death of a young girl, my office convened a group of water safety experts and concerned community residents to form a lakefront safety task force. The task force has been meeting on a regular basis at my City Hall office, and they are coming very close to coming with a set of recommendations that we hope to have released within the next month. Recommendations for what the Park District, what the city, what we all can do to make our lakefront safer to recreate on. A number of those recommendations have already been implemented by the Park District that I'm happy to see. We've had a very, very good and working relationship with the Park District, and one of the outcomes of that is I've been in discussions with the Park District about identifying a funding source to take care of that pool at Sullivan.
Thank you. Mr. Moore, what can residents do in response to shootings, and how would you make it happen?
Well, our neighborhood was shaken to the core by those tragic, indiscriminate shootings that took place last fall, and of course, we tragically have other shootings that have taken place that also shake our neighborhood to the core. One of the things that we can do in addition to ensuring that we have the police protection we deserve is to organize block clubs and community organizations to come together. And my office has been a very strong advocate on behalf of block clubs and actually helped form a new block club that formed as a result of the tragedies of last fall, the Sherwin Avenue Neighbors. And they've been meeting on a regular basis, and we helped that get off the ground by providing the leaders with advice and assistance on how how to get a block club started. That's also why I'm a firm believer in community policing. I was proud to have been community policing.
Thank you. Ms. Haddon.
I also believe in the ability and the importance of having organized communities at the local level with neighbors knowing each other. So in office, I will support block clubs. I think the Alderman's office is well positioned to provide regular resources and training to make sure that block clubs can also be inclusive, right? We live in a complex ward with people with a lot of experiences, and one of the challenges in response to shootings oftentimes has been some people don't feel safe with more police and some people do. I think block clubs help us to get to know one another and create that real sense of safety, and also making sure that we have mental health services and counseling available for our community members when we are impacted by the trauma of gun violence.
Thank you. I'm putting two very similar questions together. I don't think it will make it too long. Ms. Haddon takes this. Do you have any specific plan or idea on how to get non-residents to come to Rogers Park and spend money at our local restaurants or retailers? And then the other similar question, as a local business owner, I'm always trying to grow a customer base, even though the majority of Rogers Park residents leave to other neighborhoods to spend their money. What will you do to help our local economy grow?
One of the biggest perks I see to having this position is that I will rarely have to leave our community. I love Rogers Park, and I definitely think one of the things I can do in office is to work with existing organizations like the Rogers Park Business Alliance, the Chamber of Commerce, and our local business community to promote us even more. People need to know what fantastic local businesses that we have, and we have a slew of entrepreneurs and services here that also aren't just tied to our retail community. I want to help develop a strong local economy, and that's one of the core tenets of my platform. I think we need a plan coming from the Alderman's office, and we have some good examples of how that's worked in the 48th Ward that I hope to model.
Thank you. Mr. Moore.
One of the reasons I helped form the Rogers Park Business Alliance many years ago is because I believe that strong business and commercial districts are good for a neighborhood and help a neighborhood's vitality. And I've been thrilled to see all the new restaurants and other commercial enterprises that are opening up on our arterial streets. One of the reasons I do this Follow Me on Friday that I've been known for is to promote our businesses from within. Every time I do one of these events, and we have literally hundreds of people come to them, so many people come up to me and say, I'm so glad I didn't know this place existed, or I've walked by and I've never gone inside, and you provided me an excuse to do so. Promoting our businesses from outside the neighborhood starts by promoting our businesses in the neighborhood and making sure that we keep those dollars in Rogers Park rather than going out of the neighborhood. And one way of doing that is letting people know all the good business opportunities and restaurants that are available in our community.
Thank you. Mr. Moore takes this next question first. What is your plan for keeping Rogers Park diverse and pushing against gentrification?
Well, thank you for that question. I believe the key to our diversity is to ensure that we have housing that it's affordable to people of all incomes. That is why this has become one of my top priorities. Actually, always has been one of my top priorities. Just this past year, I was thrilled that we were able to preserve the homes of 56 senior citizens whose home was threatened by it being sold to a private developer. I used my contacts with the city and with the CHA to get the CHA to buy the Levy House and thereby preserve the homes of 56 senior citizens. We also worked with the CHA on an innovative development over at Sheridan and Devon that provided 65 units of public housing. I see David Orr here. Remember back in the day when back in the 80s when you had the courage to support scattered site housing in our community and the uproar that ensued? As it didn't happen with that. 65 units of public housing.
Thank you, Mr. Moore.
And
Ms. Haddon.
no uproar over that.
All right, speaking of uproar, Sir, you have to stop.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. I told you I was a German teacher, so that was your last chance. Okay, Ms.
And I had a German mother and grandmother, so I take orders very well.
Well, I'm not so sure any of us in this room has seen that happen so far. So going forward. All right, Ms. Haddon. No applause. Ms. Haddon, same question about diversity and gentrification.
Making sure that we have a comprehensive development plan so that we can have development without displacement is one of the key things that I think we're lacking. We live in a difficult economy, and we see all around us in all these different neighborhoods that there's a lot of fast-paced development happening that is displacing people. As a city, we're losing a lot of folks, especially low-income people and black and brown people. I live here because this is a place that I feel at home, and it is because of our diversity. I think that we can't afford to wait for projects to come to us, and I look to work with regional expert institutions and our neighbors to make sure that we have a development plan for housing and keeping housing affordable in the 49th Ward, not just for next year, but for the next 5, 10, and 15 years. We need to be more proactive than what we've seen in the past.
Thank you. Timekeepers, give us 60 seconds. And you know what, you guys, it's been like an hour. So stay in your seat or stand up if you want to, and let's just do some neck rolls, okay? Because we've got another half an hour. I'm going to get down from this stool. My feet are falling asleep. So do a couple neck and shoulder rolls, and our students will tell us when 60 seconds are up. All right, I kind of like this question. Here we go. Where were we, Ms. Haddon? What's the best way to avoid really terrible ideas like the parking meter deals from being passed in City Council without one nay vote? Ms. Haddon.
Elect new people that will put your voice first instead of those of outside interest. We see a lot of this. I've only been in Chicago for 15 years, and I've been shocked and appalled at what passes for good legislation and what our city council has chosen to spend their time on. That was clearly a bad deal. We can't give up public resources and opportunities for revenue, and that's why we need new leaders. It's time for a change because I want Chicago to be here for the next 50 and 100 years, and the city council that we've got and have had for the last 30 years is that kind of decision making is driving us into the ground. It's ruining our city. It's short-sighted. We need perspective and people who are going to make decisions based on the people that live here, based on community interest, and not what outside interest and powerful mayors tell them to do, and not what powerful donors tell them to do. And I think it's that simple.
Thank you. Mr. Moore.
The issue is accountability. And I have been a fighter for accountability in city council as long as I've been there. Accountability and privatization. I was a sponsor of an ordinance that would expand the Inspector General's authority to include members of the city council long before it was popular. Unfortunately, I ran into a buzzsaw with a mayor named Daley who was opposed to those kind of measures of accountability. So you keep on trying. And one of the benefits of representing awards such as this is that you're representing a community that shares those kind of values, that demands the most out of its, demands accountability out of their elected officials. And I believe I've risen to the occasion and have tried to be accountable and accessible and will continue to do so.
Thank you. Mr. Moore, what is your definition of access to affordable housing?
My definition to access to affordable housing. Well, as I mentioned in answer to affordable housing before, I believe we need to have housing in order to preserve our neighborhood special diversity. We need to have housing that's affordable to people of all incomes. It is a challenge because of the rising development pressures. And so in addition to doing what I have done to secure housing for people of low incomes and moderate incomes, we also have to come up with measures to address the issue that we're facing now, which is apartments that have had deferred maintenance, many of them owned by ma and pa landlords who are selling to larger developers. And the only way they can make those repairs, which we all agree should be made, is by raising rents. We need to provide incentives for the landlords, and we've been working on some measures to prevent that from happening.
Thank you. Ms. Haddon.
My definition of access to affordable housing, I think, one, we should look at what are the people locally in that area earning, right? Not just the federal standards, not just what's affordable to people over in Wicker Park, but what are we earning and what's accessible and affordable to us. And then we also need to look at other circumstances. People with disabilities. Something that's affordable isn't necessarily good access to affordable housing if there aren't options that meet their needs. I think a lot about that with our aging population. And then also, a lot of what passes for affordable housing nowadays are these 300 square foot studios, and they're not meeting the needs of our families, you know, of all types. So we need family size units, we need affordability that's set based on the people who live in the area, and we need better options for accessibility for people with disabilities.
Thank you. Ms. Haddon, what is your commitment to environment, both in the ward and the city? Will you fight for a real recycling plan?
Yes. Yes. So my commitment to the environment is really based in self-interest. We are all living through the impacts of climate change and also an economy and the way that we live that is not sustainable to our environment. As a city and in city council, and as the third largest city in the country, we should be leaders on making sustainability a priority. And it's in the interest of every person that lives here and who will come to live here. I also have a lot of concerns and want to focus on what kind of infrastructure needs, whether it's our transportation or our water management system, that we need to be building for the Chicago for the future. I know locally people are already experiencing a lot of flooding in their basement. We have a lot of these rains. This is of primary importance to me and of real concern to me as a Chicagoan.
Thank you. Mr. Moore.
I was a very, very strong proponent of recycling. Chicago was far behind any other major city in terms of implementing recycling. They started out with this discredited blue bag program, which I fought, and they went ahead and implemented it, and guess what? It was a failure. Fortunately, we were able to finally implement a blue card program citywide. That's a start, but as studies have shown, our participation rate is still woefully low, except in the 49th Ward. We're doing okay here, but we need to spread. It can't just rest on the 49th Ward. It needs to be spread across the city, and that involves education. That involves encouraging people to recycle, learning how important it is and why it's important to the environment. That will certainly go a long way. In addition to my work on recycling, I've also been working very closely on the climate action plan for this city.
Thank you. Mr. Moore. Do you support the police training center that Rahm Emanuel wants to build? Why or why not?
Well, it's not only Rahm Emanuel, but it's the Obama Justice Department. When they made their recommendations, one of the recommendations they made is to have a new police training facility, because it was their belief and their observation that the city's current training facilities were woefully inadequate. We need well-trained police, and we need them, and the Obama Justice Department believe one key to that is to have a professional training facility where you can train police officers in scenario-based training, de-escalation methods, cross-training with our fire department to make sure that we're not operating in silos. The cost of the training center would more than pay for itself if just 2 or 3 of these lawsuits could be avoided. These multi-million-dollar lawsuits that the city has been forced to settle could be avoided. We could pay for it right there.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Ms. Haddon?
I do not support the police and training center. The reason why is not...
I'm sorry. Give her a couple extra seconds, okay? Cut it out, you guys. You know it's not okay, right? All right.
Our police do need more training, crisis intervention training, anti-racial bias training, and we can and should implement and fund what's necessary. And also, we have finite resources in the city, and I do not think that it's acceptable in a budget crisis to spend $95 million on a new police training center when students here at Sullivan High School have to run around the school for track practice. We have competing needs, and in City Council, we're going to need to make some tough decisions about where we spend our money. How we spend our dollars is a direct reflection of who we value in our city. I value our students, I value our families, and when it comes to budgetary decisions, I'm going to put them first. Yes to training, yes to improvement, no to the new police training facility. We can work and should with what we have.
Thank you, Ms. Haddon. So, timekeepers, you don't need to start on this one. This is a yes or no question, and obviously it would depend on timing, etc., but yes or no question. In theory, will you agree to a second debate? Ms. Haddon?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
In theory. No. It depends.
Next question. Mr. Moore? Are you aware, and actually everyone in the balcony, just look up while I'm reading this question. Are you aware of structural issues and deferred maintenance on the infrastructure of neighborhood schools? Leaky roofs, chipping paint, etc. What will you do to address this?
Oh, I'm sorry, it's my turn. Of course I'm aware, and that's why one of my roles as alderman, and one I believe I perform well, is to serve as an advocate for the schools to get the resources that they need. We've, over the course of my years as alderman, have secured $80 million for capital improvements to our schools. We still obviously have a lot more work to do, and I will continue to serve as an advocate for the schools to get the resource and to use my experience and my relationships to get improvements to the schools, and particularly to their physical plants that they are entitled to and deserve.
Thank you. Ms. Haddon?
Yes, I'm very aware of the deferred maintenance and infrastructure needs in many of our schools and experiences we've had in the past. I will be a champion for making sure those resources are heard, and frankly, I think it's unacceptable that the reason why Kilmer's getting a new roof and the reason why Gale Elementary got asbestos abatement several years ago had to come at community voice. It was neighbors, it was our school community, it was our parents and our teachers who went to the Board of Ed, who got press attention, and frankly, that's the only reason why this moved forward. I want to support those efforts, but also to let you know that being a community voice means being alongside you there and being in those closed rooms and the halls of power to make sure that I will be advocating for you while you take care of things here, while you do your jobs, while you raise your families, and while you, support me as your community choice.
Thank you. Ms. Haddon? What will you do differently to ensure that the 49th Ward doesn't lose population like the rest of Illinois and Chicago?
I've been recruiting residents already. Telling you. I'm getting people to move here. No, I think it's making sure that this is the healthy, safe, welcoming community that it's been for decades. I want to carry on that tradition. I think that means making sure that we've got a good reputation, that we're keeping housing affordable, that we're keeping diverse housing options, and that we're investing in our neighborhood public schools, because those are two of the biggest reasons why people move here, live here, and stay here. And I also want to make sure that I'm continuing the traditions of our community festivals, of everything that makes this community great. I'll be your chief neighbor and your top champion, because that's how much I care about this place, and that's why I chose to live here.
Thank you. Mr. Moore?
And I will continue to be your neighborhood champion and neighborhood booster. Good schools and a range of school choices are one of the things that attract people to a community. A vibrant business district is another thing. Safe streets. And I will continue to work on all of those issues. Enhancing community policing, making sure that people feel that they're connected not only with the police, but with each other and with this community. Building community and signaling to the rest of the city and indeed the rest of the world that Rogers Park is a very special place. It's a place you want to be. It's a place you want to live because it's unlike any other neighborhood in the world practically, where people from all walks of life live together, work together, and get along together. So promoting those kind of values and providing the kind of educational choices, the range of affordable housing choices, and the range of retail amenities to make this neighborhood the best place to live.
Thank you. Mr. Moore, how are you planning to support the development of the Rogers Park Food Co-op, which will be an international full-service grocery store owned by the community, hiring local, buying local, and reinvesting in the community?
I will do whatever whatever they ask of me. One of the great things about Rogers Park is its wide range of food options. That's why I was, very proud of my wife Barbara, who's here today, who worked with other community leaders to bring the Glenwood Sunday Market to our community 10 years ago. That has proven to be a wonderful boon to the neighborhood. Ann Hincherman, one of my staff assistants, I loan her part-time to help with the market, to help make it successful. And that's the same kind of attitude I would approach a food co-op or any other initiative that people want to bring to our community to make this neighborhood very livable and special place that it is.
Thank you. Ms. Haddon.
I think the Rogers Park Food Co-op is a great example of what I've seen in my 11 years here of community-driven efforts to bring innovation, sustainability, and bolster our local economy. I'm pretty sure that you guys are over 300 members at this point. Once I'm done working and trying to grassroots finance my campaign, I'd like to join and be a member. And as aldermen, work to support Rogers Park Food Co-op, but also other institutions. I think we need new alternative economic models. I live in a housing co-op, and I think that making sure that we can survive and thrive as a community means looking at alternative economic structures, promoting those things locally, and I would be proud to have the Rogers Park Food Co-op finally find a home and a space and grow and thrive in our ward.
Thank you. Ms. Haddon, how will you make students feel safer in school?
One, I would take time to listen to the students. So it's been a while since I've been a student, and I didn't grow up in Chicago. So I didn't go to Chicago public schools. I went to public schools in Columbus. I've had the great pleasure of working in multiple high schools here at Sullivan and across the city. One of the things that I want to bring to the table is having an Aldermanic Youth Council, because I believe that young people have an important voice in making decisions in our community. I want to be the best advocate I can be, and that means oftentimes listening, providing that access to leadership and to that decision-making power through that advisory body, and making sure that I continue to spend time in your schools with you.
Thank you. Mr. Moore.
Well, spending time in the schools is certainly key, and I think in terms of the most important element to a child's education is making sure that they feel safe in the school. Some years ago, I think there were a lot of kids who didn't really feel safe in Sullivan High School, but that's changed. Change in culture with a change in principles and a change in attitude. Learning about conflict resolution. I'm very proud of the fact that the suspensions have gone down considerably at Sullivan, because there's a different method of conflict resolution now, and that's due to the leadership of Chad Sullivan. And Chad, you should, wherever you are, you should take a bow for the good work you've done here. And what I view my role as alderman as being a supportive role. I can't be a principal of all schools, but I can be a supportive alderman.
Thank you, Mr. Moore.
To the schools.
Mr. Moore, do you support using TIF funds for the Lincoln Yards development?
I don't. I have not made a decision on that. I am waiting to hear out the debate, and I've been reading about it very extensively in the press, and I will reserve judgment at this time until I have all the facts.
Thank you.
And they're still negotiating, so. we'll see what the final proposal is. It's still in the negotiation phase.
Thank you. Ms. Haddon.
No, I do not support using TIF funds for the Lincoln Yards development. I think that, you know, I've heard from residents in our community already about how we feel about it, about how they feel about it. I've read the news. To me, this seems like parking meter 2.0. On the way out the door, there's a large commitment trying to be made of our public dollars to, frankly, a development that does not require it. We need to, I support the Back to Basics TIF ordinance. We need to use TIF funds, which could be, and in many places is not a controversial tool. It's a valid tool for community development and reinvestment. But here, the lack of accountability and transparency for the last couple of decades has been inexcusable. Back to Basics TIF ordinance is something that my opponent has not supported, but that the Progressive Reform Caucus has, and one that I would support. And it would not be to support developments like the Lincoln Yards project.
Thank you. Ms. Haddon, what is the plan for rent control? Inquiring minds want to know. Is this going to be realistically implemented? And if so, any part of Rogers Park or certain landlords only? What will this look like?
Sure. So right now, the debate about rent control is happening at the state level. So we have a constitutional ban on rent control. And now that's a broad topic, like a broad header for what could be a host of policies. So I've been supportive of lifting the ban on rent control at our state level. At the city level, it could look like a lot of things. It could look like having small kind of percentage caps on how much rent can go up. But one of the things that I think is important for folks to know is that whatever policies, whatever proposals come to the table, if this gets changed at the state level, I'll definitely be reviewing this and understand that while we need to have measures that keep housing affordable and keep rents from being increased at large percentages, we also need to make sure that especially small owners are able to maintain their buildings, maintain their capital expenses, and I think that we can find the right balance for that.
Thank you. Mr. Moore.
I do. I also agree that the state prohibition on cities being able to consider rent control should be removed. I'm a big believer in local control. People in the cities and towns across the state are in the best position to decide whether this is a good measure or a bad measure. And so I supported the advisory referendum that was on the ballot in the 49th Ward. And I hope our legislators see clear to lifting the prohibition. Once we do, then we have to sit down and if there is a measure proposed, look at it. There's a lot of possible unintended consequences as a result of rent control, but I certainly would be open to examining it and want to make sure, though, that we avoid some of the pitfalls that cities such as New York and San Francisco and Los Angeles and Seattle have experienced, where these cities have rent control, but they also are the highest housing costs around.
Thank you. Mr. Moore, how ready are you to move on activities to improve food security like community gardens?
Well, we've been a big supporter in my office of community gardens, and they've been a very popular measure through our participatory budgeting process. And a number of them have been supported and voted on by the voters. And we do whatever we can to encourage people working the land and growing their own food. It is something that I believe is one of the great things about our neighborhood.
Thank you. Ms. Haddon.
Absolutely supportive of the continuing to help our neighbors develop community gardens, supporting the ones that we have, and also really interested in some of the local expertise that we have in not just community gardening, but also urban farming. So one of the reasons I love this community is because we're full of people who know a lot about a lot of things, and also we could be an area for innovation as we've been in the past. So very interested in hearing what current proposals residents have, and wanting to make sure that I support those.
Thank you. Ms. Haddon takes the last question first. And let me just show you the stack. This is what I asked. This is what I didn't ask. So your candidates can stay until 9, and I hope that you're going to grab them by the lapels and get a few more answers. But here we go. What would you do to improve the CPS school lunches from a 4th grader?
So I know this sounds like a funny question, but I will speak from personal experience. When Principal Adams did a participatory budgeting program here in the school, that was actually through this community process where students here said what they wanted to change. Having more healthy options, more vegetarian options, was really serious here. The limitations that they faced to actually changing that was the contract that we have with Aramark, this private company that gets to determine what our school students and what our kids eat. I don't think that's right. In office, I would work to, 1, bring more accountability to CPS so that we're getting good contracts that are in the best interests of our students. Because while it seems funny, there are real issues that our students need, and there are kids here who choose not to eat lunch because some of their lunch options are so terrible and unhealthy.
Thank you. Mr. Moore.
I feel very strongly about that, obviously.
I agree. Sadly, there are a lot of children in our community and communities throughout the city for whom their meals at school are really their only true nutritious meal of the day. And we need to make sure that those meals are indeed nutritious, that they are of a quality that kids will want to eat them. Was one of the things that I'm most proud of is the work I did with the Illinois Hunger Coalition to have the Chicago public school system offer breakfast in addition to lunch for the very reason that I just mentioned. There are kids coming to school hungry, and if you're a child and you're hungry, you're not going to learn very well. And so we worked with CPS to institute not only school lunches but school breakfasts to ensure that our children get a good start of the day so that they can concentrate on their studies rather than their stomachs.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Mr. Moore is going to give the first summation, and timekeepers, we're going to 90 seconds. Because that'll be an easy wrap, right? 90 seconds. Mr. Moore. Oh, wait, sorry. Are you ready?
Timekeepers ready yet?
Yeah.
All right. I want to start by thanking Maria for waging a spirited campaign. Though I kind of wish he hadn't run, I got to admit competition is good. It keeps me on my toes. And it's given me a chance to reflect on how much I really love this job and our community. Being alderman is truly a labor of love. I could have retired, collected my pension, and secured a well-paying job, but money has never been a goal of mine. Public service is my passion. This neighborhood is my passion. Helping others is my passion. All the money in the world couldn't match the feeling I had when I told the seniors in the Levy House that their homes were safe and they could continue to live with their friends. Did I change the world? No. But I certainly made a huge difference in the lives of 56 senior citizens. My ward staff and ward soup Dan Murphy also make a huge difference every day in the lives of our residents. Between them, they have 63 years of accumulated experience and share my passion for our neighborhood. Sadly, if I go, they go. A giant loss for Rogers Park. As a freshman, Maria will have a staff half the size of mine with none of the experience. Something to keep in mind when going to the polls. I hope you honor us with another 4 years, but regardless of your decision, I know I speak for my staff in thanking you for the privilege of serving this very special community we call home.
Thank you. Ms. Haddon.
Thank you all for, being here for so long, for those fantastic questions. I think it's time for a change. So I'm not running for alderman because I think everything is terrible. I'm running for alderman because I think we have had a lot of progress. There are a lot of good things here in our community, but most of what I see that I love most is what you've done. It's community organizations, it's neighbors who care, it's local institutions, it's our schools. The Chicago that we have is one where leaders take a lot of credit for the accomplishments of others. What I want to offer you is a pedestal to amplify and lift up your work. That's what I've done for 10 years, working with community organizations and local governments around the country. It's what I want to do here at home. And also, I think that I want a Chicago here for the next 50 years. You know, Joe said that words are great, but results are better. And I don't think the results that we're getting are enough. You know, I decided to run because I am concerned about where our city's going. We're facing pension crisis, we're facing housing crisis, we're facing gun violence, but these issues aren't new. And having the experience of working with local government around the country, I'm embarrassed and appalled that we've got a city council of 50 people that aren't making these issues prominent every day. I want to work at least as hard as you work.
Thank you, Ms. Haddon. Thank you. So now, everybody, snuggle into your seats for another few seconds. And those of you who haven't been in high school for a while, pity kids who have to sit in classrooms. But bear with me because we've got some thank yous and a couple of announcements. So first of all, I'd like our two candidates to stand, please. Let's give them a huge round of applause. Thank you. Okay, have a seat. I'm so impressed. And these days, I think everybody knows how hard it is to put yourself out there and run for office. So I've seen a lot of passion. You have to be a determined risk taker to run for office. These are your neighbors. They're gutsy. They've really put themselves out there. And I feel that you're fortunate to have two such good candidates who really, from what I'm hearing, and I don't know that much about your ward, really are doing their best to understand what's going on in the ward. So now, I really want to thank Sullivan High School, and in particular, Mr. Adams. He was a wholehearted support of this and brought in all of this student participation. So I'd like all of the students, most of whom probably are standing. If you're standing, wave. Students, give us a wave. And staff as well. Mr. Adams pointed out there were at least 3 teachers here tonight. You know, on a school night, they've got other stuff to do. So audience, if you can and you wish to, I'd like you to stand, and the rest of us are going to applaud you. You don't have to, because really, for our country to function, folks, for our country to function, we really do need to have an informed and engaged electorate. And coming out to a local election, because you know that these are the folks who affect your lives much more than more distant races, even though president might be more important, and, well, never mind. Why did I start that sentence? But it's your local folks who really affect, you know them, you recognize them, you can go to their offices. So now I'd like members of all of the co-sponsor organizations, stand or raise your hands, please. I want to say something about that. If you've never worked on a debate before, just look around. They got the venue, right? They got the index cards, they got the pencils, they got the time cards, they got the stopwatch, they got the timekeepers, organized the card sorters, we had card runners, there were programs. There are name tents, the mics are here, chairs are around, publicity was done. This was done by your neighbors, people, by people in these local organizations, probably might be making pleas for membership, but your neighbors did this for you, and I'm glad that you gave them a nice round of applause. You guys are going to talk about Election Day and stuff? I'll turn it over. I had a couple more things, but I'm done.
Kathy, let's hear it for our moderator. And she wanted me to let you know that friends don't let friends stay home on Election Day. Basically, I just want to say, save the date for those of you who want to sit with neighbors again and check out the mayoral candidates. We will sponsor a forum on the 30th over at Willie White Park. We don't know how many of the candidates we'll have. We will not have all 12 of them. We've already had one. We hope to have maybe 4 or 5 on that night. So you're all welcome. And go ahead.
And I want to throw in a thank you to the news media that's here. Thank you. Thank you to CAN TV, Chicago Tribune, Loyola University, the Neighborhood News. We will be posting on the Network 49 website links to the stories when they come out, certainly like within a few seconds, right? Well, certainly you can watch the video and read the stories on Network 49. All the organizations, co-sponsors will have that information. They'll be sharing the information about who attended tonight, and we encourage you to join and get involved, stay involved.
So the other thing that you need to know is Twitter was on fire during this. Whatever that means. Whatever the heck that means. All right. So out in that hallway, there are voter registration forms. If anyone needs to change your registration, change your address, do that now. Everyone, I love that you came out tonight. Thank you so much. This is what democracy looks like.